February has come and gone and brought one of the most stacked lineup of game releases in a very long time. In this video, we're going to take a look at the top 10 games that were released in February. Number 10, Street Fighter V. This is probably the most controversial game of the year thus far. Mechanically, Street Fighter V is quite good. The gameplay is very good, the graphics look great, but the obvious issue with the game is the severe lack of content. The single player is very bare bones, there's very few characters, and not to mention the online's been pretty unstable. It's hard to recommend Street Fighter V at this point unless you're the most ardent fighting game fan. If that is the case, there is quality in the content that is there, it's just not enough. Number 9, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. Few would think that a third-person shooter in the Plants vs. Zombies universe would be a quality game, but that's exactly what the original Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare proved. The sequel was released back on the 23rd, and while it wasn't really innovating upon what the first game did, it did add enough content to justify a full release. With new classes, several new game modes, and more options, Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2 is a more refined version of the original game. The original Garden Warfare was a surprise in how it was actually fun. With Garden Warfare 2, they've turned this into a premier shooter on the market. Number 8, Firewatch. This was another very controversial game. Firewatch takes place in the Wyoming wilderness in 1989. You play as Henry, a fire lookout. Things go awry, and I won't get more into the plot since this is a very story-driven game, and that's probably the thing that makes Firewatch so controversial, the fact that it is so story-driven and that there's very little gameplay. If you're a fan of games like Dear Esther, then there's a lot to like about Firewatch. Artistically, it's one of the best games I've ever seen, and the voice acting is very well done. The game is pretty short, so keep that in mind as well. Regardless, for $20, it's solid. The game will keep you engaged until the end, however, the ending of the game leaves a lot to be desired. Number 7, Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. It was nice to see Digimon back into the video game scene this month with Digimon Story Cyber Sleuth. While the game doesn't do anything out of the ordinary from your typical JRPG, what it does do is offer great old school style gameplay. Along with that, if you've been a fan of Digimon over the years, there's a lot of fan service in the game. It should be mentioned, this is a full retail price game on the PlayStation 4, and I don't really agree with that. You can clearly tell that this was originally a PlayStation Vita title, and it probably should have been priced accordingly. However, for fans of Digimon or even those that want an old school JRPG, this will be right up your alley. Number 6, Unravel. One of the most unique games from Electronic Arts in a very long time, Unravel is a puzzle platformer where you play as Yarny, a small creature made of yarn, and you must navigate through the environment utilizing the yarn that makes up Yarny to solve puzzles, avoid creatures, and traverse obstacles. From a gameplay perspective, there's some imperfections in Unravel, but in terms of artistically conveying emotion throughout the game, it does that in a masterful way. Unravel is a game that I think everyone should play. It's very unique and different in the best way possible.
And now you can push your little raft in place and you can cross the water safely. Or fairly safe anyway.
Number 5, Gravity Rush Remastered. Gravity Rush was one of the best games on the PlayStation Vita, and this month it saw its re-release on the PlayStation 4 in the form of a remastered version. With better graphics, a 1080p resolution, 60 frames per second, and Gravity Rush Remastered comes packed with all of the game's DLC, this version is by far the most optimal version of the game. In Gravity Rush, you play as Kat, a girl that has the power to manipulate gravity, to walk on walls, float, and integrate it into her combat. One of the big issues in the original game was the controls, and while it's not perfect on the DualShock 4, it is much better. While graphically you can tell that this is a Vita title, the fact that it does have a gorgeous art style offsets the dated visuals. And keep in mind, Gravity Rush 2 is coming to the PlayStation 4 sometime in the future, so if you haven't played the first game, now would be a great time to do that for only $30. Number 4, Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is a game that I don't think a lot of people saw coming. The game has elements of Harvest Moon and Rune Factory, and the game is big in scale considering the fact it is an indie title. The old school visuals look fantastic, and while it isn't graphically amazing in the traditional sense, in an unconventional way, this is a terrific game to look at. Mechanically, the game is also on point. The farming, fishing, mining, combat all feel refined and well designed. And the story is told pretty well too. Added to the fact that Stardew Valley is a game that pretty much any computer will be able to run, there's no reason not to play it. Number 3, Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 4. Anime video games have never been the best games in the world. However, with Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm, the games have been consistently of high quality. That isn't different with Storm 4. This is the final game in the series covering the final arcs of Naruto. The story mode itself is high octane, fast paced, and big budget to say the least. The roster of characters is bigger than ever, featuring characters from all across the series. However, just like with Street Fighter V, the online play was very unstable and the connection was inconsistent to say the least. Unlike Street Fighter V, the game was packed with content and that's where it really excels. And if you have been a fan of Naruto throughout the years, this is a must-buy.
There we go!
Number 2, Far Cry Primal. The latest game in the long-running franchise, Far Cry Primal was Ubisoft's attempt to diversify a somewhat stale game series. Did they succeed? I would say so. While Far Cry Primal is set in a completely different time period compared to previous games, the Stone Age, and obviously there is none of the traditional gunplay, you can still tell that this is a Far Cry game mechanically, which is a good thing. The art style, the controls, the movement, it still feels like Far Cry but with a new coat of paint. If Far Cry has never done anything for you, Primal probably won't change your opinion. But if you've just thought that the series has become a bit redundant, Primal will be a pretty good game for you. It diversifies it quite a bit. Finally, number 1, XCOM 2. Firaxis Games knocked it out of the park with XCOM Enemy Unknown, so when it was announced that XCOM 2 would be a PC exclusive this time around, most of us already knew the game would be excellent. But even with that, XCOM 2 blew away expectations. With the ridiculous amount of customization, excellent controls, great visuals, and overall the game is engaging and addicting. The only downside really with XCOM 2 was the poor PC performance. Being an exclusive on PC, the fact that high-end PCs were seeing many dips in frame rates is unexcusable. However, many of those issues have been fixed, so at this point, XCOM 2 is well worth the pickup. That wraps up our countdown of the top 10 games that were released in February 2016. What do you think? What were your favorite games this month? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching and goodbye.